Hi, my name is Corey, and today I want to talk to you guys about Shaman and Dragonflight Mythic Plus. Over the past few weekends, every weekend since it's been open, I've been spending as much time as I can on the beta, running Mythic Plus on all the healers. And this past weekend, after the buffs that Restoration Shaman got to the damage the weekend before, and even more this last week, I spent about I think most of Thursday and most of Sunday, so basically 2 days this past weekend just playing Shaman, trying to get a feel for it, seeing how much damage it can do, how its healing is. And I feel way better about it now compared to how I was feeling a few weeks ago. I still feel like they could use some healing buffs, although that's mostly for raid. I really don't feel like they're actually that behind in a 5-man setting, although I'll get into that later. But yeah, the main changes, I have them pulled up here right now. They compiled them so we don't have to just look at a Wowhead data mining. In the last patch notes, the main thing we care about is that they increase the damage of all Restoration Shaman spells by 22%. And there's Flame Shock and Lava Burst in here, and they did some small buffs to Acid Rain and stuff like that, and I'll get into that later. But basically for this video, I do ramble a bit if you don't know that already, so apologies in advance. That's just how I talk. I want to go over some gameplay examples because I understand that not everyone has access to beta or has time to sit down and watch beta. So just giving you some gameplay examples of how the class DPS is, heals a hard boss fight, and some other just gameplay examples to get an idea of how the class is, and then just kind of talk about the talent options and the strengths and kind of where that puts Shaman against other healers in the meta right now. So first things first, I have a damage example because I think that's the most exciting thing, is that Restoration Shaman is actually getting some damage buffs. Okay, so here's a damage example. This one is from Azure Vault. So this is just going to be a 3-pack pull. So since Chain Lightning only goes up to 3 mobs, and then the only other damage spells that goes beyond 3 mobs is Acid Rain. And I'll get into that later, but Acid Rain goes up to 6 and is not a huge part of your damage. Shaman definitely shines the most, I think, right now in single target and 3-pack pulls and doing priority damage, which is something that obviously doesn't show up as well as overall on a damage meter. But it's non-pad damage, it's meaningful damage. So I think it's important to look at. Well, let me get to the right part of the video. Okay, so this is just a regular 3-pack in the ring in Azure Vault. As you can see, I don't have any of the, because sometimes there's buffs up here and I want you guys to think oh, she's doing a lot because there's no buff here. This is just regular, whatever my character is wearing. So the first thing I'm doing right now is I'm charging up my Stormkeeper. I have a trinket right here. I'm wearing double on use. I was trying to use double on use to try and line up damage with my Stormkeeper, because Stormkeeper makes your next 2 chain lightnings or lightning bolts instant cast and do 250% of regular damage. So the first thing I do is I charge up Stormkeeper. I put out a Flame Shock. I'm putting down Healing Rain for Acid Rain, although you shouldn't do that unless it's 4 targets, but I know that we have a Thundering timer, so wait for Thundering to come out before you use my Stormkeeper charges, actually. And also, you want the healing from Healing Rain. So Thundering's coming right now. I pop my trinket and I put down Cloudburst. Cloudburst is going to give you 10% crit because of our 2-piece. And then also this is giving me crit as well, this trinket right here. And then when Thundering comes out, I'm going to use my Stormkeeper charges that I have right here. You can see I have 2 of them. The first thing I'm doing is casting Lava Burst. This is to proc Master the Elements. I'll pop it up here. This basically makes it so your next nature healing or damaging spells does 10% increased damage. Normally you should not hardcast this. I decided to hardcast it though because I said, I was waiting for the Thundering buff to actually go up. If you see it spawning and you're man, I've got a second to kill, there's no reason not to take the time to just cast a Lava Burst, because you don't want to use your Chain Lightning charges from your Stormkeeper until you actually have the Thundering to buff your damage. So yeah, I started casting that before the buff went out so that I have it go out, and then I decided to do another one. You can't do that if you want. It's kind of a net neutral gain. And so just casting another Chain Lightning, but I'll talk about that later. And I go ahead and I clear my Thundering. And again, this is just 3-target cleave. We're sticking right around 45k right now. This will kind of sink down a little bit as we get lower. And if the pull went on longer, so that pull was probably 25 seconds. Resto Shaman damage is really, it's not as heavily baked and upfront as Evoker damage is, where Evokers, they Fire Breath, they use their Living Flame from their stacks, and most of their damage is baked into that, and if they just do that every 30 seconds, they'll do a lot of damage. Shaman, similar concept, not as punchy though, not as effective, because Stormkeeper is every minute, and it's not as much damage as Evoker, Fire Breath, and Living Flame, the Living Flame combo is, but it is kind of like the similar idea where like you get that minute burst where it's like a class like Resto Druid like has pretty constant damage throughout a pull. Just wanted to give you a damage example to see how much a Shaman can do. We did like, so we ended at 36k on a 20-second pull. I think most pulls I'm probably ending around like 22k or something like that. I also didn't have to do much healing on that one, but yeah, maybe I'll show you some examples later on that are a bit more like realistic for like pulls where you are having to heal. Next example I want to give you is on a boss fight. Example, I just want to give you an idea of like how much single target you could do on a fight where you're not having to do much healing. So this fight, he does like this bursty healing or bursty damage like every like 30 seconds, and you just need to make sure everyone's top up for the next one. So you get a lot of time, basically DPS. He also does like an interrupt, which is a bit annoying. But for the most part, this fight's really easy and you don't have to heal that much. Yeah, this is like the damage and the AOE interrupt that didn't go off, but as you can see, we ended there just around 17k, just to give you an idea of how much single target Resto Shaman is doing right now. So this is the boss example I wanted to give you. It's you can do the first two bosses in any order in Algathar Academy, so it's just a boss in Algathar Academy. And it is the Overgrown Ancient. So he has 3 main abilities that you have to watch out for. This first one, which he's casting right now, is called Branch Out. You can see there's like this little tree in his hand. It looks like old druid tree form. When he throws it on the ground, it becomes an ad you can hit and that you need to kill. As soon as he starts casting Branch Out, everybody in the group, it gets this dot applied to them. It's a bleed. It could be dwarfed off. And it persists until you kill this ad, and then once this ad dies, then you go sit in a circle it creates in it, it clears everybody's dot, and it does this about every 50 to 55 seconds, I want to say. He also summons these little ads called Hungry Lashers when he casts Germinate. So whenever he casts Germinate, it creates little swirlies on the ground that you have to dodge, and once he does that, all these lashers pop out. These lashers do apply a nasty poison. It's also sometimes annoying for your tank to get aggro on them, so that's another thing you have to worry about. And then the other big thing you have to worry about as a healer is when he casts Burst Forth. So Burst Forth happens whenever he reaches 100 energy, and it basically brings everyone down to like 10% HP. It's just a big AoE, does a lot of damage, and the problem is he casts this tree, and then right after he casts this tree, he casts Germinate, and it leaves these swirlies on the ground that you need to move and like dodge. And then right at the end of that is when he casts the Burst Forth. So it's like you have a lot going on, like a lot of movement and a lot of damage. And then right after the Burst Forth ends up like stops going off, all the ads pop up out of the Germinate and they'll all just start randomly hitting everyone. So it's really, really important that you get everyone topped for the Burst Forth. So this is the part of the fight that I wanted to show out. So you can see he's doing the Branch Out cast again. This is the same point I had before where he's about to throw a tree, but like I said, the visibility in this room, the things that are in the way, very, very fun as always. So he's going to cast the tree. He's going to get it down. So I do a healing wave, and I've already put, like as soon as I saw him throwing the tree, I already pre-put down a Cloudburst because I want the Cloudburst to go off before the Burst Forth happens to make sure everyone is going to be topped. I don't want it to go off after. It's more important that you live the Burst Forth than anything. So I'm going to do that. I reapply my Flame Shock, and then I'm pressing my Healing Surge. There's a talent that busts your next heal whenever you press Flame Shock, so that's part of the reason I'm doing that. And then now you're seeing me channel my Stormkeeper. So we have about 4.5 seconds left on our Cloudburst. I'm charging up my Stormkeeper, and he's about to cast Germinate, which is going to summon the swirlies on us to make us have to move, and I don't have Spirit Walker's Grace up because I used that on the last one. So I want to make sure that I have some kind of mobile healing in order to deal with this damage. So let's finish doing Stormkeeper. So there's the Germinate. So there's swirlies on the ground that we have to move out of. I'm sorry, the lighting and the visuals, it's so bad. That we have to move out of. The Cloudburst is about to go off, and I've activated Ancestral Guidance. I'll put Ancestral Guidance up here, what it is, because that wasn't around last expansion or the one before that. It was last in Allegiant. Anyways, basically it duplicates 25% of your healing, and it turns 25% of your damage into healing. So I'm popping it right now because my Cloudburst is about to go off, and because I want to use Stormkeeper to heal through this, because there's going to be little ads that are going to spawn, and so then I can wait until those spawn and then cleave on those to do a lot of healing. So AG just healed with my Cloudburst, so I saw everybody's health bar go up a little bit. I saw my Stormkeeper charge. You're going to see me press Stormkeeper, everybody's health bar move up again, like that, and then you just saw everybody get topped. which is really nice because the burst forth is about to end. So we're still gonna have one more tick of the dock go off before this burst forth happens. So it would have been nice if I'd had like the cloud burst go off a little bit later, because I definitely did some overhealing there. It's just a thing about getting used to timers because it's on beta, but this is just me talking to myself and thinking about this for myself later on how I want to time things, because this will be one of the harder ones for me to get through every single time on Shaman when you don't have Spirit Walker's Grace to help you out. Yeah, we're gonna get one more tick, and the burst forth goes off. It's not that crazy because it's not tyrannical, but we would definitely be like sub 10% if it's on tyrannical. It gets really, really spooky. Trust. And then I'm using Ascendance to do some extra healing here, like I said, because these lashers don't always directly aggro onto the tank. In this case, they are directly aggroing onto our tank. I think Demon Hunters always be pretty good about like picking up that aggro immediately, but it might depend on the tank you have. And I have a couple more seconds of AG right now. So yeah, I think that is a really, and then at the end let me wait for myself to do it in the VOD. I end up hovering over and showing you how much AG healing, like I only pressed AG right at the end there when it duplicated the Cloudburst, and then it duplicated the Lightning Bolt Stormkeeper, and you saw how like that took topped like most people in the group and stuff like that. So yeah, really fun, really powerful button. Really excited to have something on Shaman that turns damage into healing. The closest thing we ever had to that before was Vespertonum, but you weren't using your Vespertonum for healing. Like, let's be real, that was never a thought that crossed your mind. But yeah, seeing it used this way, really exciting, I think, for the future of the class. I like this spell a lot, and I wish we'd always had it, or had it the expansions I've been playing. Yeah. And then last, I think it's the last example I want to give you is just a basic healing example. So this is the first boss Ruby Life Pools. I think this is always like my go-to example for giving healing, just because this fight requires a lot of constant throughput. I think that Shaman has a lot of really like I said, like last example I was talking about how good their CDs were. They also have pretty good constant throughput due to having Cloudburst and having P-Wave, and you get the thing that makes it so it's only on a 30-second CD, which I think is really good for this fight. Looking back, when I looked back to this fight, I don't even think I played this fight that well. I was like looking at this and like, man, I could have done a lot of things better. But what you're gonna see here is I made sure that I didn't have that many Riptides out, so I only have 3. I definitely could have had 5 if I had been thinking ahead. You're also gonna see that I have 2 Earth Shields out. That's a talent you can take. I didn't have that for the other dungeons, but I did take it for this one because I'd be doing enough like active healing that I think it'd be worth it for me to have Earth Shield on myself instead of putting a point Nature's Guardian. I'll talk about that later when I talk about talents. And basically what I've done is I've activated P-Wave, and then I've activated Unleash Life, and then I've activated Cloudburst. So right now we have talents that are basically just like the Swirling Currents conduit, and then there's something that like when you press P-Wave, it buffs your next healing wave, and then also pressing Unleash Life. So healing wave itself right now hits for like 10% of your HP. It is just like if you don't do anything to it, it's so bad. But luckily there are a lot of modifiers, and I'll show you guys that when I get to the talents, that you can use to make yourself get really big healing waves. You just need to be like aware of it while you're playing, and it's like just like playing with all these buffs and like interactions between different spells and shamans right now that basically make healing something like this more doable. So I get the Chill Storm here, which is like, while this is going off, it does ticking damage to us, and at the end it'll do like a really big burst of damage. When it goes on you as a healer, it's like your worst nightmare, because it's like, okay, I have to heal this damage and I have to move at the same time, and I don't have Spirit Walker's Grace up because I probably just use it for damage on trash because that sounds just like me. But nonetheless, able to heal it. We are saving Lust. This is a 16 Tyrannical, so sometimes you get the set of ads because she spawns ads based on HP. Sometimes you get it right after the first Chill Storm, but because it's a Tyrannical and we're saving Lust for one of the ad phases, we're going to get an extra Hailstorm and an extra Chill Storm. On this one, I do end up using my AG. Ideally, I think you would save it for the ads and do what I showed you in that last example, where you press Chain Lightning on the ads and use that to heal. But you know, I wasn't really thinking about that. I was just kind of like, man, I wasn't prepared for this. I'm pressing AG. Yeah, and then the ads come out. Just doing basic healing, putting down another Cloudburst. I do end up using my Stormkeeper here though for damage, of course, because I like doing damage. Hail Bombs come out, and then we're just gonna use another P wave. It's really there's not a whole lot to talk about here. This is just like your basic Shaman gameplay if you've played it before with having the P wave ability. But yeah, that's basically all I wanted to show you. It's just like how basic Shaman healing feels. Like the Shaman healing itself feels largely the same on the things you're relying on. If you were playing like a Necrolord Shaman in Shadowlands, it doesn't play that differently, but there are some interactions that I want to go over that I think are pretty nice. Okay, so before I go into the specifics of the talent choices, I do kind of want to touch on what I was just saying about like paying attention to like how things interact and like the buffs you have, because it feels like that's a reoccurring theme. So one talent that I really like that we are getting is Focus Insight. So casting Flame Shock reduces the mana cost of your next heal by 20% and increases its healing effectiveness by 15%. So that's nice. That's one buff you can stack. The next one is Master of the Elements. Casting Lava Burst increases damage or healing of your next nature, physical, or frost spell by 10%. So when you saw me taking the time to like hard cast that Lava Burst before I used my Stormkeeper when I was waiting for Thundering, that's what I was doing, is I was just proccing that. I'll talk about that later with damage, but basically it's like net neutral taking the time to do that. And then you also get a buff whenever you use Primordial Wave. P Wave increases the healing done by your next healing wave by 15%. And then we also have Swirling Currents. Using Cloudburst Totem increases the healing of your next 3 Healing Surge, Healing Wave, or Riptide spells by 25%. And then of course there's also things like Flash Flood, reduce cast time, and you know, a bunch of other things you can take. But those are the main ones I wanted to kind of look at. So if you see if I just cast a regular Healing Wave on myself. So it does 20,000. So I have 242,000. That just did less than 10% of my HP. This is what we mean when we say that Shaman needs some love and needs some buffs. However, I just want to show you how big you can get your P wave to be, basically. So you cast your Flame Shock, you get your Insight buff, you cast this, you get your Mode of the Elements buff, cast your P wave, cast your Unleash Life, cast your Cloudburst, and then you press your Healing Wave so that you have all of your buttons. You can see that it did, okay, it critted. So it did it 104k, but let's pretend that's 52k and it didn't crit. And then the P wave, the cleave that would have gone on everyone in your group that also had a Riptide would have been 28k. So the difference between doing just like if you are just trying to raw dog heal something by pressing Healing Wave, doing 20k, or even just like a Healing Surge, 17k, you're going to struggle. But if you're paying attention to how all these buffs interact, then you're going to do well. And that's something that I really, really like about the direction we took. That this feels like the first time, not only with AG, but with Focus Insight and with Master of the Elements, we are getting incentive to DPS. Like every other class, it feels like has always like, you know, like Crusader Strike gives you Holy Power, Rising Sun Kick extends this, like obviously like does it directly through damage, like these incentives to DPS and have to either directly do healing, give them resources, or buff their healing. In this case, they're basically adding weight. Like AG is a bit more direct if it's on a 2-minute CD. But Focus Insight and Master of the Elements feel really nice because you're getting rewarded just for keeping Flame Shock on the boss. And wow, I got a Lava Burst proc, and this is a Lava Burst proc, and I'm not actually hard casting it. Wow, I also have a Master of the Elements buff. Now let me press my Healing Wave and get, you know, like a nice little buff to it. Okay, that is something that I genuinely like. Now we talked about the positives. Not to say that this tree isn't positive, but I'm going to go into specifics and kind of talk about what I do like and what I don't like. We'll start over here on the main Shaman tree. So this is like, let me double check that I didn't log out in some weird build. For the most part, this is the build that I was trying. I was trying like out a few different things. But yeah, you basically take all of your first things. The first thing you want to make sure that you are getting over to is Cloudburst Totem. We love Cloudburst Totem. However, in order to get there, we do have to take some things that are like kind of meh. And one of those is this Water Totem Mastery consuming. Actually, that's not so bad. It's not as bad as I thought it was. Water Totem Mastery, Tidal Waves, which we've already had, and then of course from there you can go to Master of the Elements. You can choose between Master of the Elements or Refreshing Waters. However, Refreshing Waters isn't going to increase your DPS, so take Master of the Elements, okay? For keys at least. And then you can take Water Shield. I actually am not taking Resurgence, which you might notice. I don't take Resurgence, and I don't take Monotide Totem, which you're probably like, wow, that's weird. However, I really wasn't having any problems with mana. I think the only times I encountered mana problems was like, we had like 17 tyrannical like Rsham or something, and I was just spamming healing surges a lot, and that was like one of the first keys I did on Shaman, so I definitely wasn't playing it well. But since then, no mana problems. Over on the left side is where some of the juicier stuff is. We have Stormkeeper, and then yeah, this is mostly like a PvP thing. I don't think I'd ever take this, but this thing that lets you stay in Ghost Whip, definitely just take Stormkeeper. We get Deluge for free. You're taking Healing Rain, Ancestral Vigor. We love Ancestral Vigor. And then here is Acid Rain. So I kind of touched on this earlier, but here's the thing about Acid Rain. And I'll just go over now. So Acid Rain, 1.9 second cast. Chain Lightning, 1.9 second cast. If you cast your Acid Rain on 3 targets, I'll show you guys damage breakdown. Acid Rain isn't going to start doing more damage than Chain Lightning until 4 targets. Details is kind of weird. It should be doing like a little bit closer to like 40k. So for the most part, if you are just purely DPSing, like you're like, wow, I don't need to do any healing on this pack, you shouldn't really take the time to put down Healing Rain for Acid Rain with the current tuning. It could change after I put this video out, unless there's 4 targets. Now that being said, most of the time there's at least some healing to do on a pack, and because of our 2-piece, we are putting down Cloudburst Totem, so at least like the overhealing from the healing raid would be feeding into your Cloudburst Totem, and that Cloudburst Totem would be giving you some extra healing. If you need some like a bit of tank healing or just whatever healing on a fight, or not a fight, on a trash pack. So yeah, if you have to do no healing and there are 3 targets or less, don't put it down. But if you're going to be doing some healing, you might as well just put it down and let your Cloudburst like absorb that healing. So yeah, just kind of a word of caution about Acid Rain. Don't expect it to carry your damage and be doing amazing. And also it's going to be frustrating when the packs get moved out of it. Of course, then we have Spirit Link Totem. We have Lava Surge and Echo of the Elements. These are required. Healing Tide Totem, actually not required. Feel no pressure to take this button at all, because this button does nothing in raid, and even less in keys, because they won't scale it for 5-mans. So if you don't take this button and you just want to put it somewhere else, I think that's totally a viable option. I just kept it because I'm used to having it there, and sometimes it's nice to just press as like a duh button, like without having to think about it, but it really does like nothing. And then over here, Riptide, meh. You want to make sure that you're getting down to P-Wave. I will always take the one option, Continuous Waves, that reduces the cooldown of P-Wave by 15 seconds instead of this one, which is P-Wave has a 30% chance to not incur its cooldown, because I like predictability. Like most of the time, like if I don't know if it's going to reset or not, like I already have cooldowns lined up in my head, like I'm not going to rely on some like RNG CD, you know, like this is a fine conduit to play with like on farm and stuff like that, but I would always prefer taking Continuous Wave. I don't ever see myself taking Tumbling Waves. And then you get Earth and Harmony, which is really nice, and that leads you down right into Ascendance. And then you basically have on this build, oh yeah, also I always take Unleashed Life. You could take Undulation if you don't like having the extra keybind. Totally fine. It's a lot of free healing, but like I showed you in that like Ruby Life Pools example, and the example I showed you when I was buffing my P-Wave, I always want to be able to control when I'm getting my buffed like healing waves and stuff. Unleash Life also just like a fine like on the move mobile small heal. Like it shouldn't be slept on. Again, not amazing, but shouldn't be slept on the way that it is. And I just like playing with it. Like whenever I play P-Wave, I'm pretty sure I'm always going to take Unleashed Life, because I'm always going to want to have the control to buff my P-Wave heal instead of having to play and track around Undulation to make sure that that's going to be buffed when I need it to be buffed, type of thing. Again, if you don't want to press a button though, it's really not that big of a deal. Outside of that, like I said, you could take Healing Tide Totem. You don't have to take it. The other thing that I do choose to take is Ever Rising Tide. So overcharges your mana for 8 seconds, increases your haste by 10% and healing done by 10%. While overcharge, your mana regeneration is halted. So like I said earlier, there are a lot of bursty healing fights in these dungeons. The ancient one, Tree Ancient one, I didn't point it out, but I was pressing that button, or I should have been pressing that button on every single one of those like high movement like burst force to get the extra healing. If you think about like the Rsham bubble, if you've seen like the second boss and like no could offensive, like there are some like really heavy like I need to put forward like a lot of healing in the next like 10 seconds type of moments, and I think having a CD like this is really good. And on top of that, like for the most part, I'm just pressing the CD damage because I get 10% haste out of it. Like, so like you better bet that I'm just going into packs and I'm just pressing that, and I'm just pressing Chain Lightning. And like I said, I haven't had any trouble with mana. Like it would not be a big deal for me to just like not take Healing Tide Totem and take Resurgence again, because this is going to give you a bunch of mana back with how our 2-set and 4-set are giving us extra crit right now. So yeah, totally. Totally go ahead and take that if you want. If you're worried about mana, you can also take like Mana Tide Totem. There's Mana Spring Totem. Like there's a bunch of tools for you to get mana. And you don't have to take this, but I don't think you're going to have a problem because you're taking it. And there's other things you can use to like offset it if you want to take it. Outside of that, I don't think there's like a whole lot that you're basically missing. I had some people asking me about Torrent, but this is just something in keys that I've never felt that like strongly about. Like if you were taking something like Primal Tide Core, I could see you wanting it. Yes, like the Riptide from your P-Wave that you're getting every 30 seconds as well is going to benefit from this, but I just didn't feel like that was the type of healing I needed. Like the kind of like constant throughput Riptide healing type thing. Like I said, it's like bursting for the most part. Like I already have all my Riptides off before the bursty damage is happening. You could also take Earth Living Weapon, an improved Earth Living Weapon, if that's something that you would like to do. Those buttons do a good amount of healing. If you look at like raid logs and stuff like that, you can see Shamans using them mostly because they're trying to get down here, of course. You can also take Earthen Wall Totem or APT Totem. APT Totem, actually pretty good in keys. Like obviously, like before we would never take either of these because we always want to make sure we're getting Ancestral Vigor, but since Ancestral Vigor is up here and it's free, you could totally take one of these. It's just I never really, I don't want to take a point out of here, you know, like I don't want to do this. I would rather keep my point down here personally, but there is definitely a time and a place where this could actually really own instead of a key, especially for like that burst forth type of thing if you want everybody just to live, because getting the extra health on this and just like the insurance if someone dies, very good, very good. Okay, right side of the tree, I really don't feel strapped for points. I feel like I have extra points to play with things that really aren't that important, and I do like that a lot. I have very few to little problems with the right side of the tree for Shaman. I cannot completely say that about the left. I feel a little bit strapped for points over here, and it feels like we have, I know people say this all the time, it truly feels like we have a lot less than we did inside of Shadowlands. I'll go over that a bit. I'm also making my camera a bit smaller because I realized you can't see the bottom of my talent points over here, my bad. The first thing I want to point out are the things that are important to try to get to this tree, because I think looking at that and kind of working your way backwards is an important way to look at these trees sometimes. On the right side, I don't think you have to think about it as much, but on this left side, I think it is important. You have to get AG. you have to get there. And then you also want Swirling Currents. So obviously we already have Healing Stream Totem, but you have to go here because you don't want to go over here and then miss out on Swirling Currents. Anyways, AG, really fun button, you want to get here. Swirling Currents, really powerful to have on your Cloud Burst Totem, you want to get here. Improved Lightning Bolt increases damage of your Lightning Bolt. Like I said, one of our strengths right now is, oh, I think I'll throw in a single target thing. One of our strengths right now is single target damage, so I think in taking this is really important, and just doing like priority damage is really good. Instead of keys, a little bit underrated. And then you can get over to Nature's Guardian. I'll talk about like the picks between this and like other ones in a bit, because this is definitely one of the ones that's probably going to be moving around. Elemental Warding reduces all magic damage taken by 4%. There's some movement between putting points here and over here in Totemic Surge, which reduces the cooldown of your totems by 2 seconds. I was playing with this for quite a few keys, and it wasn't exactly my favorite. I feel like I'd rather have the reducing the magic damage. And then of course you want Spirit Walker's Grace, and then Graceful Spirit having the reduced CD on it is really nice. Earth Shield you do have to spec into. And then after that, this is the one I was talking about where I took it in Ruby Life Pools. It makes it so that you can put Earth Shield on yourself and one other person, and you can keep Water Shield on yourself as long as well as Earth Shield if you take this talent point. So in dungeons where I'm doing more active healing, I put this here, but in dungeons that weren't like Ruby Life Pools, where I wasn't doing a lot of active healing myself, I would instead rather have the extra point in Nature's Guardian, because I'd always rather have a talent that's kind of like AFK Brain Off, heals me when I need it the most. And then if there's like a dungeon like Ruby Life Pools, which you can kind of think of like as like the Sanguine Depths of this expansion, where you know you're going to be actively healing yourself pretty often throughout the key, so you're going to get like a lot of value out of that Earth Shield, then I was trying out this talent. It's also possible to get both of these, so don't like get like too caught up on that. It just depends on what you're willing to give up, which is you have to give up quite a lot. Obviously you want Astral Shift. This makes it so that it lasts longer and has a reduced CD. You want Wind Shear, you take Spirit Woof, and then because you have to get down here to improve Purify Spirit so that it'll actually remove curse effects. I guess maybe you could not take this if there wasn't a curse. There's actually not that many dungeons with curses, so maybe you don't need to take this all the time. I already pointed this one out earlier, which is Focused Insight, which buffs your next heal whenever you cast Flame Shock. Purge, there's a lot of purges, and then Nature's Fury, pretty good. Winds of Alakir, pretty meh, but you're trying to get down here to Gust of Wind. Now, there are a lot of things on this tree that you're looking at like, wow, we don't have Earth Elemental, we don't have Tremor Totem, we don't have Cap Totem, we don't have a Frost Shock, we don't have Hex. Like, this is what I mean. I want to have Gust of Wind, and I want to have the Improved Lightning Bolt, I want to have Nature's Guardian, and I want to have AG, and if I want all of those things, then I'm not having the regular utility that I have. I'm not saying it's not possible to get them, but I am saying that it feels harder than some of the past healers that I've made videos on so far, to get all the things that we used to have. Like, we are legitimately like missing out on a lot of buttons. Like, it is hard to get all of these buttons. Like, I think that like the easiest points to give up are sadly like Nature's Guardian and like Windrush Totem to get like your Earth Ellie and like your Cap Totem. The other ones that are easy to give up is like the Gust of Wind and the 2 points that you really don't want to spend to get to Gust of Wind in order to get to, again, Earth Ellie, Cap Totem, you know, like Frost Shock and Hex, like those kinds of buffs. But I think giving up those buttons, I think feels really bad. Like Windrush, not a huge deal. There's a lot of travel time in some of these dungeons, so I do think it feels really nice. I really, really like having Nature's Guardian and keys though. Like, that saves you a lot more than you realize it does. Frost Shock, I was playing most of the cases without Frost Shock, and I didn't really mind it. Like I said, or I didn't say this, Frost Shock is mostly just like a damage button for like when you're on the move. And it is a slow, but I mean, like, we baseline have our Earthbind Totem. So like, we do still have a slow. Frost Shocking everything individually, not really something you really need to resort to most of the time. And yeah, but your damage does suffer a tiny bit, especially when there's like a high movement fight and you can't just like press Frost Shock while you're doing something. There's a couple dungeons like Azure Vault and stuff like that where I think I'd want to make sure that I have it. Earth Ellie, I don't think it's a huge deal, honestly. Tanks are really strong right now. If that changes, then I think maybe my opinion of this will change. Hex, meh. Cap Totem, kind of a big deal not having that one, I have to say. Some other things that are really cool in this tree that you could get to is Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm is like a little bit overwhelming how far back it pushes mobs, but there is this cool talent right here. The Thunderstorm knocks up enemies instead of knocking them away, which basically is just like the Draxthir, not Tail Swipe, but the other one. I'll put it up here because I remember the name. And then there's a bunch of things here about like totemic like recall and stuff. I'll pop it up here so you can read it in case you're curious, but I just do not see myself ever wanting this as a Resto Shaman. I don't think this side of the tree is really meant for us at all. But yeah, that's basically the left side of the tree. Like I'm not saying there isn't wiggle room, but I'm saying like, man, you want Gust of Wind and you want Nature's Guardian, and if you want both of those things, then it feels like you're having to give up some utility that we've always had, and that feels like really bad. Again, I know other classes are having the same problem, but I swear like the levels of like how bad it is between each class, like some are worse than others, and this one feels worse than others to me. Okay, Next thing I want to talk about is how does Shaman fit into the meta, basically. And along the same realm of everything I'm talking about in this tree, so it feels like in order to keep some of these cool new things we got, we were having to give up old things that we had, and it feels like Shaman has lost a lot of its identity. So some cool things that Shaman has always brought that other healers haven't brought is a kick and bloodlust. And those were the unique things we brought, and we no longer have those because every healer except priest now has a kick in their tree, and evoker also has lust. Evoker feels very similar in their capabilities inside of keys. The major difference being that they are just doing way more damage than Shaman right now. Like evoker, I think they have better raw healing. I think they have better damage and more, I don't necessarily want to say like access to more utility, but like they definitely don't have to give up a lot. Like I said, like they get this kind of thing for free. They get like a typhoon for free. There's a bunch of stuff, and so it feels like until like unless Shaman gets a major damage buffs, like they'd never be able to compete with that. They're not bringing a buff. So like the reason Master Druid like is also up there is because they're bringing Mark of the Wild. Shaman doesn't bring a buff. Like the buff they were bringing is like kick and bloodlust, and they weren't bringing like the saying that Rest Shamans are a jack of all trades, master of none for raid. I always felt like it was true for raid, but in keys it always felt like, well, they have a kick and they have less, and so they're the master of that, you know, in like a 5-man setting. And now they literally are the master of none anymore, because it feels like every other healer is bringing something really unique to the table that's a lot better than Rest of Shaman right now. I think the only one that maybe feels like in a similar boat is Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin did gain like a battle res and stuff like that, but like I feel like Holy Paladin is still just like in a stronger spot overall, as well as Shaman. I think that Shaman is somewhere in B tier right now. Like I think like Evoker, Resto Druid, and HPAL are above it, and I think it's like hovering somewhere around like Disc Priest. I think it's better than Mistweaver. I hope I think it's bad of me. But yeah, that's kind of like how I feel where they are. I feel like the main problem is what I said, that they just aren't bringing anything unique. They don't have like a trump card of like a PI, a physical damage buff, Mark of the Wild, you know, just like something. They don't have like any like type of trump card like that. Other thing I wanted to mention, Shaman Mastery. So Shaman's like the other thing that's always been unique is their ability to do low health healing, and I think this bears a lot less on Mythic Plus than it does Raid, but I want to bring it up anyways, just because I know somebody will bring it up in the comments. Shaman Mastery was one of the few, if I'm pretty sure outside of the Disc Priest talent, which I can't remember the name, which like increases your healing done when you damage or heal somebody below 35% HP. It was like the only like healing someone who's low health like buff was Shaman Mastery, and that was something that was like really unique to Resto Shaman. I feel like a lot of other healers are also now getting buffs like that. So like Monk has Save Them All. Resto Druid has their talent that increases their rejuve and tranquility healing based on low health targets. Evoker Mastery is kind of similar to Resto Shaman, but instead of it being based on just like flat missing HP, it's like just if you have less healing than the Evoker has, then they get their mastery benefit type of thing. And then Holy and Disc Priest both get access to Twist of Fate. It's called Twist of Fate. It's like, what is it called? They both get access to that. So yeah, that's like another thing that like used to be like really unique to Rest of Shaman. I feel like is no longer unique, and it feels like all these other healers are getting access to all these other things from other healers, and Rest of Shaman is not. I will say the one thing that I'm really happy we are getting is what I talked about when I started talking at the beginning of the talent section, because I want to set a positive note, which is the interaction between damaging spells and healing spells, and being able to get some like positive net healing out of doing damage. Like, to me, I love that. I think Rest of Shaman is in a great spot to heal Mythic Plus. I think their damage is going to be okay. Their damage, the problem with it being that it is all active. Like I said at the beginning, when I was talking about the damage, was Evokers similar damage pattern. However, there's packs more of a punch, and so it just holds, like it carries their damage, because like we don't have like a bunch of like dots and like passive damage. So anytime when you're having to actively heal, your damage is going to lag behind. But when you can actively damage, you can do good damage and you do good priority damage. I'm sorry for rambling so much. And last thing I want to touch on is just because I was talking about it earlier, but just to show you in case you didn't know what it was. Our 2 set is while Cloudburst Totem is active, your chance to critically strike is increased by 10%. So like I showed you in that damage example, one of the first things I did was to put down Cloudburst, and then I didn't press any healing spells. It was just because I wanted the 10% crit, so that my Chain Lightning, especially my Stormkeeper, were going to crit. And then your 4 set is your critical heals have 215% effectiveness instead of the usual 200%. So Shaman healing has always scaled really well with crit. Our mastery healing, past a certain point, they do some like breakpoint, like I think it was like 400 last time, where like after that your mastery healing starts scaling better with crit than it does with mastery type of thing. And because we always have like these talents that make it so we get like extra value out of critting, I think the 2 set and 4 set, like after they change it, is actually pretty good. Yeah, those are all of my thoughts on Shaman. Please let me know if you have any questions. Again, sorry for rambling so much. I love this class, and I hope you have a good day.